The universe is not withholding anything from you. It has never held back a single thing. The abundance, the love, the wealth, the peace, the fulfillment, it's all there. All of it. But it waits. It waits not with reluctance, but with a patient knowing. It waits for you not to ask harder or strive more, but to become. The universe is ready. The question is, are you? To say the universe is ready to give you everything is not to say it has something that you lack. No. It is to say that everything you've ever wanted already exists in a finished state. The reality where you are whole, abundant, successful, deeply loved. That reality is already real. It is already vibrating in the unseen, waiting not for effort but alignment, waiting for you to close the gap between your inner world and your outer experience. You must understand, reality does not respond to need. It responds to identity. You don't get what you want, you get who you are. And who you are is not defined by your past, your pain, or your current circumstances. Who you are is determined by your assumption, by what you dare to claim as true even when all evidence says otherwise. The universe is not responding to your complaints. It is responding to the frequency you choose to hold. Your inner dialogue is the command center of creation. When you live in the feeling of lack, of not having, of hoping and wishing and waiting, you delay the arrival of everything that is already yours. But the moment you assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, the moment you walk, speak, breathe, and think as if it is done, you collapse the distance between your desire and its manifestation. You must feel it real, not once, not occasionally, not when it's easy, but consistently. Like breathing. Breathing, the most powerful shift you will ever make is from seeking to knowing, from chasing to resting, from hoping to embodying. You must know with an unshakable inner certainty that what you desire is already finished, that the money you wish for has already been printed, that the love you long for is already alive in another's heart, that the health, peace, and opportunities are already formed in the realm that creates all things. You are not here to force. You are here to choose. And you choose with your awareness, with your imagination, and with your assumptions. Imagination is not some childish escape. It is the divine blueprint of reality. It is the sacred canvas upon which the future is painted. Every time you imagine something and dwell in that experience, you are creating a spiritual prototype, a mold. And if you persist in that state, life must conform to it. That is not a metaphor, that is law. The universe rearranges itself for the man who knows where he belongs. You don't need signs to believe, you need belief to see signs. The world is only a mirror. It cannot give you what you refuse to give yourself internally. Walk like it's yours, speak like you already have it, think like it's done. That energy is not arrogance, it's alignment. You are not waiting on life. Life is waiting on you to feel it real, to inhabit the version of you who already has it, who already knows, who already walks in that blessing. That is how you become magnetic. That is how the universe opens doors no man can shut. That is how you shift timelines without even lifting a finger. The most powerful thing you can do today is this. Assume the state. Embody the version of you who already has it. Live from the end. Because when you live from the end, the universe must catch up to your conviction. It must organize reality to match your internal state. The world bends not to your words, but to your unwavering assumption. That's the secret. Not to beg, not to plead, but to assume, to receive it now in consciousness, to feel it now as truth. And then watch how everything changes without effort. You don't get what you want, you get what you are. This statement shatters the illusion most people live under. They believe that by merely wanting something intensely enough, they will somehow draw it toward them. But desire without identity is powerless. The truth is far more profound and yet so simple that it escapes most minds that are entangled in effort and striving. The universe does not hear your pleading voice or your desperate thoughts. It mirrors your state. It bends itself to the energy you hold consistently, not the words you speak occasionally. Your current reality, every detail of it, is not a punishment or a reward. It is simply a reflection of your inner assumptions, your habitual feelings, your dominant thoughts, and most of all, your self-concept. People constantly ask why their prayers go unanswered, or why their affirmations fail to produce results. But the answer is hidden within the nature of consciousness itself. You cannot deceive the universe with empty declarations. You cannot say, "I am rich," while inwardly feeling poor, and expect your world to change. The feeling of being poor is the true request being made. The universe reads the emotional tone, not the surface sentence. You might be shouting for abundance, but if your soul is anchored in lack, the echo you receive will be lack, dressed in various forms. It could come as financial scarcity, relational neediness, or inner anxiety, because all of these are born from the same root, the state of being that says, "I am not enough. I don't have enough." So the work begins not with the world, but with the self. Who do you believe yourself to be? This is not a philosophical question. It is the foundation of your experience. If you believe you are unlucky, unworthy, or unseen, then no amount of trying will fix your life. You will unknowingly sabotage opportunities, misread signs, and attract people who reinforce that inner identity. And it is not punishment, it is law. It is the universe saying, "As you assume, so shall it be." You are not attracting with effort, you are attracting with embodiment. You are calling things not with your voice, but with your vibration. Imagine a radio station. If you are tuned into a frequency that plays sorrow and conflict, you cannot expect to hear songs of joy and victory. You can wish, pray, and even scream for a new tune, but unless you change the dial within, the broadcast remains the same. Your life, your circumstances, your relationships, they are all manifestations of the station you're tuned into internally. And tuning is not done with effort. It is done with alignment. It is done with assumption. You must begin to think, feel, and act as the version of yourself who already has what you seek, not because you're trying to trick the universe, but because you're becoming one with the version of you that belongs to that reality. This is why it's so crucial to examine the stories you repeat about yourself. Every time you say, "I always mess up," or "things never work out for me," or "no one truly loves me," you are not merely expressing frustration. You are giving instructions to the universe. You are cementing a state. And that state becomes your life. It becomes your future. Words become flesh, not because they are magical, but because they reinforce a vibration. A man who believes he is worthy will walk into a room differently. He will make choices that align with abundance. He will say no to things that contradict his worth. And as a result, life bends to reflect that state. The same man, if he believes he is inadequate, will shy away from opportunity, tolerate disrespect, and expect disappointment. And the universe, with perfect neutrality, delivers what he orders through his belief. Your concept of self is the command, not what you say out loud, but what you consistently feel to be true. You could walk through the world chanting affirmations all day long, but if your internal world is filled with doubt, fear, and unworthiness, then your outer world will reflect that chaos. The universe doesn't give based on desire. It gives based on certainty, not arrogance, not entitlement, but deep spiritual knowing. That still place within you that says, "This is who I am, this is what belongs to me." That feeling is the magnet. And so, everything begins with you. If you want to change your life, you don't need to change the world. You need to change your assumption about yourself. That is the core truth most people spend a lifetime avoiding. They change jobs, change relationships, move cities, start new projects, and yet their inner story remains the same. And so they find the same patterns haunting them in new disguises. It is not the world that must shift first. It is the self. This is not about ego. It is not about forcing a fake sense of superiority. It is about uncovering the truth of who you are beneath the conditioning, beneath the voices that told you you're not good enough, beneath the failures that made you doubt your own brilliance. At your core, you are infinite potential. The universe knows this. It waits for you to know it too. When you step into that awareness, not occasionally, but daily, moment by moment, everything changes. You become the cause, not the effect. You stop reacting to life and begin creating it. Because life was never random. It was always responding. So the real work is to ask yourself, what state am I living in right now? Not what you wish, not what you say, but what you feel to be real. Are you walking in lack or abundance, fear or faith, love or unworthiness? And once you become aware of that state, you have a choice, a sacred choice, to shift, to climb into a new identity, not by forcing but by assuming, by imagining yourself already there, by making it so real in your inner world that the outer world has no choice but to match. That's the secret. The transformation of self is the transformation of everything. Because the universe cannot help but reflect the one thing it always listens to: your being, your essence, your assumption. Because you never get what you want, you only ever get who you are. Live from the end, not toward it. This is not just a statement of belief. It is the great secret of manifestation hidden in plain sight. The mistake most people make is to live in pursuit of their desires, to chase their dreams with the assumption that what they want exists somewhere out there, far from their reach. They place their blessings in the future, believing they must work, strive, and struggle their way into alignment with something distant and uncertain. But the truth is entirely different. The end is not out there. It's in you. And it becomes real the moment you dare to live as if it's already done. Living from the end does not mean pretending in a hollow sense. It means dwelling in the feeling of the wish fulfilled with such inner conviction that the outer world begins to obey your inner reality. To live from the end is to stand in the finished state mentally and emotionally before there is any external evidence. It is to claim your desire not as something you are reaching for, but as something you already possess, something that already belongs to you because it exists in the eternal realm of consciousness. Creation, in its truest form, is finished. Everything that you desire already exists in a completed spiritual form. You are not creating your desires from nothing. You are selecting them, aligning with them, embodying them. The only distance between you and what you seek is the gap in awareness. When you live toward the end, your energy says, "It's not here yet." And that feeling of absence becomes the dominant signal you broadcast into the universe. You affirm lack, even if your words are filled with hope. But when you live from the end, your state says, "It is already mine." And that deep conviction begins to pull everything into alignment. Your thoughts shift, your actions change, your reality bends. The people, circumstances, and events that match your new state begin to show up, not because you forced them, but because you allowed them. There is a massive difference between wishing for something and dwelling in the experience of already having it. Wishing keeps it away. It tells the universe that it's not yet real, that you are incomplete without it. And so the universe mirrors that incompleteness. But when you close your eyes and enter the feeling of the end, when you walk like the person who already has the answer, when you think from the place of the manifested outcome, you dissolve the illusion of separation. You stop being the seeker and become the possessor. You merge with the reality you desire, and in doing so, you bring it into this dimension. This principle defies the logic of the world. The world teaches you to react to what is, to let circumstances dictate your mood and identity. But this path calls for something higher. It calls for spiritual maturity. It asks you to live beyond appearances, to feel the truth of your desire even when nothing in your world reflects it yet. It asks you to walk in faith, not blind belief, but embodied knowing, to feel the joy of love before the person arrives, to feel the security of wealth before the money hits your account, to feel the health in your body before the diagnosis changes. This is not delusion, this is creation. Think of an actor who steps into a role. They don't just memorize lines, they become the character. They walk, speak, and emote from the perspective of that identity. They allow the role to overtake their current personality until the audience believes it too. This is what you must do with the version of you who already has what you desire. You must become them, not someday, not later, but now. That version of you is already alive within your consciousness, waiting for permission to emerge. When you live from the end, you give it that permission. And once you begin to live from that end, something remarkable happens. the world starts to organize itself differently. You begin to notice things you never saw before, opportunities, connections, and pathways that were previously invisible. You begin to feel an inner peace that is no longer dependent on conditions. You begin to act in ways that are aligned with your new identity. Decisions become clearer, destructive patterns begin to fall away, you no longer chase, you attract. You no longer seek validation, you embody it. Because the end is no longer a place you're trying to reach, it's the place you're living from. Living from the end also means giving up the need to constantly monitor the process. You don't plant a seed and dig it up every day to check if it's growing. You trust the soil, you water it with belief. You keep showing up as if the harvest is certain. The same applies to your desires. When you live from the end, you no longer wonder when it will come or how it will unfold. You know it's already done in consciousness. And that is enough. The moment you assume the end, the universe begins to reflect that state back to you. Not on your timeline, but on divine timing, which is always perfect. This is why discipline of the mind is so vital. Your senses will scream at you that nothing has changed. Your bank account may still look the same. Your relationships may still be broken. Your body may still ache. But none of these things are the final word unless you give them that power. The final word is your assumption. And if your assumption is rooted in the end, if your inner dialogue affirms that you already have it, then reality must yield. It must bend. It must conform. Because the outer world is not the master. It is the servant of your imagination. To live from the end is to walk in the spirit of completion. It is to let your heart beat in harmony with the future you've claimed. It is to no longer argue with appearances, but to rest in the unseen. And in that rest, in that sacred assumption, the world begins to respond. You are not asking for a miracle, you are being the miracle. Because when you live from the end, your life stops becoming a chase for fulfillment and becomes an unfolding of what you already are. You begin to experience what was always yours, not through effort, but through alignment. Not by waiting, but by choosing. Not by force, but by faith. And in that place, the universe is no longer something outside of you. It becomes a mirror, reflecting the end you dared to claim as your beginning. Imagination is not a fleeting thought or a harmless daydream. It is the very fabric of creation, the divine faculty through which reality is shaped and molded. Most people pass through life unaware of the power they hold within their own minds, mistaking imagination for fantasy, treating it as a mere escape rather than the source of their entire experience. But the truth is far more radical and more empowering. Your imagination is the creative center of your world. Everything you have, everything you lack, everything you become, it all begins in that sacred inner space where you see, feel, and believe before the world catches up. To understand imagination as the blueprint of reality is to understand the root of all manifestation. Nothing enters your life unless it first enters your imagination. You may think it was luck, coincidence, hard work, or chance, but look closely. Every great achievement, every fulfilled desire began as an imagined reality in someone's mind. Whether you do this consciously or unconsciously, your imagination is always working, always constructing, always projecting what you accept as true deep within. And the universe, in perfect obedience, arranges itself to reflect those inner pictures with startling precision. The tragedy is that most people use this sacred tool against themselves. They imagine failure. They rehearse rejection. They play out scenarios of loss, betrayal, and unworthiness again and again in their minds. And then they wonder why their lives feel like a reflection of fear and pain. But the truth is, they were imagining all along, just in the wrong direction. They gave their creative power to anxiety, and the world simply complied. The images you hold in your mind, especially when accompanied by strong emotion, are blueprints. You are not daydreaming. You are issuing instructions to the universe. If you can grasp this even for a moment, everything changes. You begin to realize that you are not a passive participant in life. You are its architect. Your inner world is not a private escape. It is the construction site of your future. And the more vividly, the more consistently, the more emotionally you dwell in the feeling of your desired state, the faster reality shifts to accommodate it. You are not hoping that something might happen. You are creating its foundation in the invisible, where all things are born. Think of the imagination as a spiritual womb. You conceive the idea. You nourish it with belief and emotion. You carry it in silence. And then, without fanfare, it manifests. It arrives not as a miracle out of nowhere, but as the visible child of your invisible faith. This is not poetic metaphor. It is spiritual law. Every fulfilled desire is born first in the secret, sacred space of inner knowing. You feel it real long before you touch it in the world. And the beauty of this law is that you don't need permission from anyone. You don't need resources, qualifications, or outside validation to begin. The only requirement is your willingness to turn inward and create, to paint scenes on the canvas of your mind so real, so emotionally saturated, that they become more true to you than your present circumstances. That is the secret of those who manifest great things. They do not wait for the world to approve. They withdraw into imagination, into that holy place of becoming, and they dwell there until the world cannot help but follow. This inner work is not always easy. The outer world often contradicts your inner vision. You will be tempted to stop imagining because nothing is happening. But that is only an illusion. Something is happening beneath the surface, behind the curtain. When a seed is planted in the soil, you don't see the roots form, but they do. When you dwell in imagination, you are planting the roots of your future. Just because you can't see it yet doesn't mean it isn't growing. Imagination must be held with persistence. You cannot visit your dream once and expect it to flourish. You must return to it daily, sometimes hourly, with reverence and focus. And not just as a thought, but as a feeling. You must feel the experience as if it is already yours. What would you feel if you already had what you desire? That is the emotion you must learn to generate, because that feeling is the signal, the frequency that brings your imagined state into alignment with your physical reality. But it is not just about visualization. It's about dwelling, about entering that state and staying there long enough to rewire your subconscious identity. You don't just want to see the scene. You want to become the version of yourself who lives inside it. Feel the surroundings, hear the sounds, touch the textures, taste the success, inhale the freedom. The more sensory rich your imagined reality, the more quickly it takes root. You are not escaping. You are rehearsing. You are rehearsing the future so completely that when it arrives, it feels familiar because you've already lived it within. This is the power the ancients spoke of in veiled language. It is the power of faith. Faith is not a vague hope. It is the embodiment of an unseen reality. When you live in imagination, you are walking by faith, not by sight. You are stepping into the unseen as if it is already seen. You are believing before evidence, and in doing so, you make evidence appear. This is not fantasy. This is mastery. The world you live in now is nothing but the after effect of your previous imaginal acts. And if you want to change the world around you, you must return to the only place that ever held the power to begin with, your imagination. That is where the real work is done, not in effort, but in inner clarity, not in striving, but in becoming, not in chasing the world, but in constructing your world first within, and then allowing it to unfold outward in its perfect timing. So if your life feels stuck, if nothing seems to change, stop looking outward for the answer. The problem is not in your world, it is in your blueprint. And the blueprint is held in your imagination. The house cannot look different unless the plan is altered. If you desire more, better, greater, then go into that sacred space within and imagine more clearly. Don't wish, don't hope, create, embody, assume, and above all feel, because imagination without feeling is weak. But imagination infused with belief, with deep emotion, becomes unstoppable. It becomes the command that the universe cannot ignore. It becomes the mold that life must fill. You are the designer, you are the dreamer, you are the one the universe listens to. And the quality of your life will always be a reflection of the quality of your inner vision. Assumption is the path to manifestation. It's not hard work. It's not how many hours you grind or how long you wait. It's not how desperately you wish or how passionately you plead. The true power lies in what you assume to be true about yourself, about your life, about what is already yours. Assumption is the silent architect of reality. It works beneath the surface, shaping every experience, attracting every person, arranging every event to match the internal truth you have accepted without question. It doesn't matter whether you shout it out loud or keep it locked inside your soul. If you assume it as your truth, the world must comply. And this is where most people miss the mark. They wait for signs, for proof, for validation before they dare to believe. But that's not how creation works. You don't wait for evidence, you become the evidence. You don't need to see it to believe it, you believe it so you can see it. And belief in its most potent form is assumption. It is the quiet conviction that says, this is who I am. This is already mine. Not someday. Not when circumstances align. Now. The moment you assume something with emotional certainty, you begin to collapse the space between desire and reality. It's no longer something far away. It's here, in your spirit, shaping your actions, shifting your energy, altering your trajectory in ways you cannot fully grasp. Yet, you have assumed many things in your life, often without realizing it. You've assumed failure, you've assumed rejection, you've assumed being overlooked, underestimated, unloved. And every time you did, the world responded in kind. You thought life was punishing you, but it was only reflecting your internal decree. Your assumptions are not neutral, they are creative forces. They are seeds planted in the soil of consciousness. And consciousness, being infinitely fertile, produces whatever you plant, without judgment, without hesitation. Whether you assume greatness or smallness, abundance or lack, joy or misery, life has no choice but to reflect it back. This is why assumption must be treated with reverence. It is not a tool to be used carelessly. Every thought you let harden into belief becomes the lens through which the world is shaped. If you assume the worst, you will always be right. If you assume things will go wrong, they will find a way to obey you. But if you assume success, love, peace, healing, then even in the midst of chaos, life will begin to bend toward your faith. It may not happen all at once, but it will begin quietly and faithfully to reorganize itself around your assumption. The reason assumption is so powerful is because it bypasses effort. It works in the unseen. It is not a loud, anxious demand. It is a settled state of being. You don't have to force anything when you assume it's already yours. You don't chase. You don't panic. You don't plead with life to give you something. You simply are the one who already has it. That energy is irresistible. It draws things to you. It magnetizes outcomes and makes others respond to you differently. Because even if they don't consciously understand it, they feel the shift in your presence. You no longer vibrate with lack. You vibrate with certainty. To assume is to take the final step in the spiritual journey from desire to fulfillment. Desire begins the process, but assumption completes it. It transforms you from a beggar of reality into a master of reality. You no longer ask life to treat you well. You assume that it already does. You no longer wonder if you're worthy. You assume your worth is unquestionable. And in that quiet inner confidence, the world loses its power to control you. You begin to shape it from within, not react to it from without. Think of the difference between a person who hopes and a person who assumes. The one who hopes says, I wish it will happen. But behind that wish is doubt, fear, and instability. The one who assumes says, it is already done. They move differently. They speak with quiet authority. They carry an energy that changes rooms. And over time, they attract realities that match the identity they've chosen, not by striving, but by being. Assumption must be consistent. It cannot be a momentary burst of faith followed by hours of worry. That's not how this works. You must live in the state of the assumption, day after day, even when the world appears unchanged. Especially when the world appears unchanged. Because that's the test. That's when most people quit. They say, I assumed it yesterday, but nothing happened, and so they go back to doubt, and the manifestation dissolves. But the one who continues to assume, who walks in the fulfillment of their desire even when everything says otherwise, that person is the one who bends reality. It is not always easy. You'll be tempted to question yourself. You'll be tempted to look at the evidence around you and let it talk you out of your assumption. But that's when you must remember, the outer world is old news. It's just a reflection of your past assumptions. If you want the future to look different, hold your assumption until it takes root. Water it with emotion. Protect it from the weeds of fear and doubt. Nurture it with repetition and inner silence. And when the time is right, it will emerge. Not because you forced it, but because you became it. There is no need to explain your assumption to others. In fact, it's better if you don't. People who are bound by the visible will try to drag you back into doubt. They'll call you delusional, unrealistic, naive. But let them talk. You are not here to live by consensus. You are here to create from consciousness. You are here to walk by inner knowing, not outer approval. Let them see your reality after it manifests. Let your assumption speak for itself when it becomes flesh. Until then, walk in silence, walk in faith. Walk in the energy of what is already yours. Assume the identity that matches your desire. If you want love, assume you are already deeply loved. If you want abundance, assume you are already prosperous. If you want healing, assume your body is already whole. It may feel strange at first, like you're lying to yourself, but you're not. You are correcting the lie you've lived under. You are replacing the false identity that was formed in fear with the truth that was always buried inside you. You are not trying to convince the world. You are trying to remind your soul. Every time you assume your highest truth, the universe takes note. Not in some distant place, but here, in the very fabric of reality. It begins to reorganize, to shift, to create new pathways and possibilities that align with your new state. And often the changes begin subtly. A new opportunity, a sudden insight, a chance encounter. But over time, they compound. The external world begins to resemble the inner one. And when people ask how you did it, you won't need to explain. You'll simply know it was assumption. Quiet, unwavering, sacred assumption. That was the path. That was the power. That was the truth all along. You must receive it in consciousness before you ever see it in life. That's the law. That's the principle. That's the pattern behind every miracle, every shift, every manifestation. And yet, most people try to reverse this law. They want to see the evidence first. They want the money to appear, the person to love them, the opportunity to knock on their door before they dare to believe it's real. But life does not work that way. The outer world is the effect. The inner world is the cause. Until you accept your desire as real within, the external world cannot reflect it back to you. The gate to manifestation doesn't open when the world agrees. It opens when your consciousness accepts. Receiving is not waiting. It is not hoping. It is not a desperate plea sent into the silence. It is a sacred alignment with what already exists. Everything you want is already finished in the unseen. The wealth, the love, the healing, the opportunity, they are already formed in the eternal realm of possibility. They are not being created when you ask. They are already created the moment you imagine them, and the moment you receive them internally, fully, without doubt or hesitation, you create the bridge through which they move from the unseen into the seen. But this receiving must be whole. It cannot be partial. It cannot be conditional. You cannot say, I'll believe I have it if I see a sign, or I'll feel abundant once my bank account changes. That's not receiving. That's delay disguised as logic. True receiving says, it is done, even when nothing has changed on the outside. It says, I have it, when the world says, you're still waiting. It is a surrender into certainty, not passivity, not laziness, but a deep inner knowing that creation begins and ends in the mind, and that the world only mirrors what you've accepted as true in your soul. To receive in consciousness is to occupy the emotional and mental space of your fulfilled desire. It is to think from it, not about it. Most people are trapped in a cycle of thinking about what they want. They talk about it, dream of it, complain about its absence, but they never mentally step into the version of themselves who already has it. They wait for the outside world to grant them permission to believe. But that permission must be given by the self, through faith. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Not because it's blind, but because it sees clearly what the senses cannot yet perceive. It is sight on a higher level. Receiving in consciousness means training your mind to feel the reality of your desire so vividly that it becomes more real to you than your current situation. It means closing your eyes and feeling the keys to your new house, the warmth of your partner's hand, the joy of a healed body, the peace of financial freedom, and not just seeing it, but living in it internally, rehearsing the scenes, feeling the emotions, speaking from that new state of being. You are not imagining to escape. You are imagining to align. You are creating a new center of identity, and the world must revolve around that new center. You cannot receive with doubt in your heart. Doubt is the silent thief that robs you of what's already yours. It tells you to look around and measure your progress with your eyes, to question every moment of silence, to fear every delay. But there are no delays in the spiritual world. There is only alignment or misalignment. The moment you fully receive it in consciousness is the moment the universe begins to move. You may not see immediate proof, but the shift has happened. The current has changed. The vibration has been altered. And now, life is catching up to your inner reality. Many people believe they have faith, but what they really have is hope tainted with fear. They try to speak positively, but underneath their words is a trembling doubt. That's not receiving. Receiving is quiet, steady, immovable. It's the calm that doesn't need to prove anything. It's the peace that comes from knowing you are not begging the universe, you are aligning with it. You are not asking for something foreign to you. You are welcoming home what has always belonged to you. There is no striving in true receiving. You are not chasing the thing. You are welcoming it. You are allowing it to come because you already see yourself as the person who holds it. The energy of striving pushes things away. It says, I don't have it yet, but the energy of receiving says it's already mine, and that shift in energy changes everything. It opens doors you didn't see before. It makes you aware of people, paths, and solutions that were invisible when you were trapped in a state of lack. You must become emotionally fluent in the reality you are receiving. Feel what it feels like to have it. Let that emotion fill your body. Let it color your thoughts. Let it change your decisions. Because once you receive it in consciousness, you will begin to act differently. Not because you are forcing yourself, but because the version of you who has what you desire behaves differently by nature. You won't need to fake confidence. You will feel it. You won't need to pretend to be successful. You'll already feel successful inside, and the world will follow suit. Receiving in consciousness also requires letting go. Letting go of how it will come, letting go of when, letting go of needing it so badly that you block it with your anxiety. The universe does not respond to desperation. It responds to alignment. And alignment is a relaxed knowing. It is the absence of urgency, the presence of quiet certainty. It's not saying, please make it happen. It's saying, thank you, it's already mine. Gratitude is the evidence of true receiving. You don't give thanks for what you hope for. You give thanks for what you know you have. This is not about faking it. It's about becoming it. Faking is hollow and full of resistance. Becoming is whole. It is when your imagination, your emotion, and your behavior all flow in the same direction. You think from your desire, you feel from your desire, and you live from your desire. That is when you are truly receiving. That is when the gate opens. That is when life begins to respond in ways that seem magical, but they are not magic. They are a law. And the greatest part is this: no one can stop you from receiving in consciousness. No circumstance is strong enough to block what you've already accepted within. No rejection, no delay, no mistake can overrule your inner decision. The moment you say, I have it, and mean it, not just in words but in your being, you become the cause of a new reality. And that new reality will move toward you, not because you chased it, but because you became the version of yourself who could hold it. That is what it means to receive in consciousness. To stop waiting, to stop doubting, to stop needing proof, and instead to walk as if it is done, to feel as if it is complete, to know without needing to explain or defend that what you carry within will shape what appears without. Because life is not waiting to give you anything. It is waiting for you to receive it first in the place where it always begins, within you.